Hi everyone, this is Todd from One Shot API. In this tutorial we are going to revisit the x402 payment gateway for n8n. Since the first time we posted this, we've cleaned up the workflow quite a bit and made it much simpler to configure so that you can monetize any custom automation that you can build in n8n. So if you come to this link that's in the YouTube description, you'll see this page. Start by clicking the Use for Free button over here and copy the template to your clipboard, and then come to your n8n account. Click the Create Workflow button and paste the workflow here. You can see there's only two One-Shot API nodes, the Verify Payment and Settle Payment nodes. If we click in here, you don't need to change any of the configurations. It'll automatically import the variables that need to resolve to settle and verify payments. But we do need to create a credential. So let's start by clicking on that box and hit create a new credential. And we need the client ID, client secret, and business ID from our One-Shot API account. So come to oneshot.api.com, make a free account or log in if you already have one, and click the API Keys tab and create a new API key. We'll call this one n8n. And let's copy that key, paste it in the first box, the secret, paste it in the second box, and then the business ID is in the top right hand corner. Put that down here in business ID, and then let's hit save. And you can see we've got our new credential here, One-Shot account 2. Let's make sure both nodes are pointed at the same credential. And then the setup for those two nodes is done. So the next thing we need to look at is the payment token configs. The only things you need to change are in here. So the resource description, once you put your automation downstream of this gateway, you'll want to make sure that this description is accurate. The pay to address, this is the account that you control that you want to receive payments into, so make sure that that is pointed at your account. Timeout, it's not super sensitive, 60 seconds is probably good. You can make it less or more depending on your use case. Here's the interesting part, the payment tokens. You can put in multiple tokens if you want to receive multiple tokens on multiple chains. For this tutorial, we'll set it up to work on Avalanche. So let's configure an Avalanche token. The things that we need are the max amount required. So I've got it set here to 1 USDC. The token address, this is the token address for USDC. Make sure your chain ID is correct. And then the name and the version. These come from the token itself, from the smart contract. If the name and the version aren't exactly what is returned by the smart contract, signatures will not verify, so these need to be exactly as returned by the smart contract. And I'm going to show you how to get the contract method ID. The last thing here, the network. So this is a x402 specific thing. This is a human readable name for the network you are targeting. So Avalanche, the network name is Avalanche. For base, it's base. So be sure to check that with the x402 protocol docs for the network name. So let's set up this token for Avalanche network. Let's come back to One-Shot API. We'll come to the One-Shot prompts tab, and we'll select Avalanche for our network. And we've got USDC here for Avalanche, and you can see it's got the x402 tag on it. We'll click this. We have a bunch of different x402 compatible tokens for you in One-Shot prompts, so you can explore that. The function that we want is transfer with authorization. And you can see here this transfer with authorization takes a V, R, and an S. So if you are using this gateway workflow and you use one of the other tokens, make sure that you're importing the transfer with authorization that takes V, R, and S, not a signature. Just for more information on that, some tokens like PYUSD only have a transfer with authorization that take V, R, and S, whereas things like USDC, it actually has an overloaded transfer with authorization. So they have one that takes signature or the signature component. So we want this one, and we'll hit add to my contract methods. And then just to show you what I was talking about with the name and the version, we'll import the name function, and we'll import the version. And now if we come to my smart contracts, you can see here is our contract and its methods that we imported. So if you click name and hit details and hit read, that name should exactly match this name, and then the version clicking on the details for version and hit read, you can see it's version number 2, and we have 2 right there. So now let's grab the contract method ID for transfer with authorization, come back to our write functions, details, grab that contract method ID, and place it here. So now we are set up to accept USDC on Avalanche. Let's save the workflow. And before we run it, I want to show you this node right here. If you want to make your own custom x402 logic where maybe the user can request certain kinds of information before they pay for it, you might want to move some of these boxes around. So this code block has some helpful functions in it that you can copy and use in your own workflows. The first one is a split signature function. This will take a signature string that is produced by the x402 client SDK and split it into the RS and V components. There is a validate payment or validate X payment function, which will make sure that once that X payment header is decoded, that it has all of the required components, and throw an error for you that you can catch if it is ill-formed. And there's also a helpful verify payment details function that will ensure that whatever token the user is trying to pay with, they're paying the right amount and that the payment is going to the correct address. And then down here you can see where I use these things, validate payment. If it doesn't validate, we throw that validation error. If the payment details aren't correct, it throws a verification error. And then lastly, if the thing fails to decode entirely, we get a cannot decode payment error. So that's all handled for you in this gateway template. So now that we're set up, let's use the x402 tool from OneShot API to create a header. We're going to be creating a header. Before we do that, let's grab this example curl command and put it in a text editor. We're going to be editing this. So you can see here we're hitting this n8n route. That route comes from the webhook. So this is a webhook trigger. The path on it you can set to whatever you want. So I've got the path set to x402 test. And so that's going to be your URL that this thing is listening on. So copy that URL and make sure we are hitting the URL that our webhook is listening on and run it. You can see that the workflow failed to validate that header because it was not a real x402 header and sent us back an error message that said could not decode the payment, and then returned the accepts parameter for all of the different kind of tokens that you might take for payment. So now that we have this running, let's activate it and generate an x402 header with this tool here on oneshotapi.com/tools. The token address, that is our token address from Avalanche. So this address here, paste that in the token address field. The amount, let's pay 1 USDC, and then the to address needs to be the same to address in our configuration. Copy that, paste that in the to address field, and let's give ourselves a little extra time. Let's put 180 seconds and create the payment header. So there's our header. Let's copy that, replace our dummy header, and now let's run it. And you can see in the background the payment verify succeeded, submitted to the blockchain, and we got back payment received and our transaction hash. If we go over to OneShot API, come to the transaction history details, you can see this is the transaction that we just ran. If we click on the transaction hash, there's our successful payment. Used a very small amount of AVAX to process that transaction. That's it. That's the complete setup and workflow for using the revamped x402 gateway for n8n. Give it a shot. If you have any questions or problems, send us a message in Telegram, and watch out for other tutorials coming from OneShot API in the future.